Well, it rained pretty good last night on the house I'm building, and water came in under the garage door right here. There's a low spot there that I'll probably kind of put a pencil mark around, and I'll probably put floor leveler there. But anyway, with water came under the door there because water splashes against the door and runs down, and then if this concrete doesn't slope away, if it's level or it slopes back slightly, then it'll run under the door because concrete's not perfectly flat and the gasket's not, doesn't seal it perfectly well. So I'm going to show you a method of fixing that. That doesn't really cost much. You can get I have saw people where they screw something to the floor to prevent this from happening, another seal kind of thing they screw to the floor. I don't do that. What I'm going to do is I'll strike a couple chalk lines and then use a dry cut cement saw blade for the circular saw and cut just a trench under the door so that essentially digging a ditch in the concrete. And I did this on my previous house too, 16 years ago, and it works well. Now, if you got the problem, the only limitation here is you can't get the circular saw all the way to the walls. So if you have problems with water coming in near one of the corners, this method may not be good for you. Maybe you can adapt it to work. I don't know, but it's mainly if you're a few inches, you probably can get within about 8 inches of each wall with the circular saw to dig your trench. So what I'll do is lower the door and then put a mark where the door hits the ground here, and then strike a couple chalk lines and cut it. So with the door down, what we want to do is put a mark right where the edge of the door is on both sides. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And then we'll open the door back up and snap some chalk lines. We want our trench to be maybe like a 1/4 inch back under the door. We're only going to cut something that's like maybe 3/4 of an inch deep and 3/4 of an inch wide. Then after we cut our 2 lines, you just take a big screwdriver and just snap the concrete out. It's pretty easy. It snaps off pretty easy. But anyway, so then you just measure back. If this is the edge, this mark is the edge of the garage door, you measure back about 1/4 of an inch and strike a chalk line. Do that on both sides. Strike your chalk line across. When I stretch the line here, I could see that the concrete's low right here in the middle for me. Again, if you got water coming in at the corners, this probably isn't going to help you because you can't saw all the way to the corners. But if it's somewhere in the middle, this will work pretty well. I'm using my sledgehammer there to hold the chalk line for me. By the way, if you're ever driving 2x4 stakes in the ground and they keep exploding on you, the reason is you have an 8-pound sledgehammer, and you have to swing an 8-pound sledgehammer really fast to drive a 2x4 into pretty semi-solid ground, and the 2x4 just explodes. That's a 14-pound hammer I got at Harbor Freight. And a lot of concrete guys, they use 16-pound hammers, but I couldn't find one of those locally. But anyway, so I'm going to strike another chalk line here about 3/4 of an inch in front of this one that I drew here. In fact, I put a mark right here, 3/4 of an inch out away from the door, and we'll strike another line, and then we'll make some cuts. So don't go nuts with the depth. You know, you only need to be 3/4 or an inch. It's got to be deep enough so you can snap it off. I'm just starting to cut the first line. You can use a dust mask, which you probably should, or put a fan right next to it so it blows all the dust out of your face. Concrete dust is kind of dangerous. It is a carcinogen. So you don't want to suck up a bunch of that. Also, if you dump some water on the concrete, stop every little bit and dump some water on it, your blade will last much, much longer. This blade is ancient. I've had it forever. Again, that's a DeWalt dry cut concrete blade. I'll put a link in the video. I think Home Depot and Lowe's both sell them still. Of course, you got to be careful when you're dumping water and you're using an electric saw. That you don't electrocute yourself. So I don't recommend you do this for safety reasons. However, if you do, at least make sure you're plugged into a GFI outlet. When you're making your second cut, if your chalk line is no longer visible, what you can do is just use the marks on your rip fence here. Well, saw guide, I don't know what it's called. But anyway, so there's my 3/4 mark, so I can just follow that line and I don't have to really uncover the chalk line. Then after you cut your 2 strips here across the door, you need to mark for a drain. So you got to finish your ditch that way. Just make sure that this gap here, that your saw will actually fit in there. So set your saw there first and see how close you can get to the corner without like your blade guide handle here hitting. So that's as close as I can get to the corner. So we'll saw that out. And after you make all your cuts, it looks like this. All the way across. This is it's kind of hard to see in the shadow probably, but that's as close as I could get to that edge. But again, if you got to get to the edges, if you've got water coming in at the corners, this is probably not for you. Again, mine's low in the middle, which this is a monolithic pour house, and so this is kind of typical because there's no form board there going out to the driveway apron, so they stretch a string and then everything sags a little bit. Anyway, I've started busting it out. It comes out quite easy. You just get there it is. Get yourself a big flat blade screwdriver. All you do is stick it in here, just give it a little pry, and it just pops right out. And there that goes. It's not real hard. Once you got concrete's very brittle, has lots of compressive strength, but very little tensile strength. So again, just go down your ditch here all the way across, and you might need those guys maybe if you hit a rough spot, but probably not. Probably just the screwdriver. You can probably just break it all out of there. Again, it breaks up pretty easy once you got them cut like this. And again, I was maybe 7/8 of an inch deep here, I think. It was a little over 3/4, and it's about 3/4 wide. I mean, if your garage door gasket is shot, well, replace that. This is a new garage door. This is a new house. And you can see the water's just coming in under the door because when rain, and eventually I'm going to have gutters on here too, which will help a lot. But I haven't got that far. But even with gutters, you can still get water coming under the door because rain blows against the door and then just runs straight down the door, and then it just piles up, and the gaskets just, they can't be that good really. So this started chipping pretty bad using the screwdriver to break it out. You can see like here and Oh, and here. I guess the surface is not super hard on this. I mean, that would probably not a big deal, but anyway, I started just driving the chisel down this way with a hammer and popping it out. That way I'm not prying on it so much. Also, don't get crazy about getting this like super smooth or anything. It doesn't have to be real smooth on the bottom. It's deep enough so that when water gets in there, it should just run out. I mean, it's not made to take a whole ton of water. I mean, you know, if you spray a fire hose against it, it's not going to be adequate. But for water that runs down a garage door, it should be fine. One other note of caution, this is quite sharp. So, I mean, if you go running your fingers down it, you're probably going to cut yourself, especially in places. Just beware. And I mean, if you have little kids that play in the garage, you know, then maybe you'd want to go and come back and dull this out a little bit with just rubbing a rock down it or something like that to take the edge off. So just be aware of that. And this is what the whole thing looks like. That's about as close as I got there. And then that's as close as I could get over here. This is where I was starting to have the chips come out with the screwdriver. And so I switched to the chisel, and like the chisel took about an hour to chisel all this out, and was a hugely messy. Because stuff's just kind of flying everywhere. Altogether, the job took from where I shot that first part of the video to now was like 2 hours. And that's including hosing everything down and sweeping all the big pieces out and then hosing everything down. This is what it looks like with the door closed. Come on down there, buddy. I don't have a handle on the outside because I'm going to have an opener. So, as you can see there, this is why you cut it a 1/4 inch back here. So this back cut is a 1/4 inch under the door, so the water can run down the door and then drip into the ditch we cut here, and then run on out. And again, it's not going to be perfectly level. See, there's some water standing right in there, but it'll dry out in pretty short order. You do have the complication of leaves and stuff getting in it, so when you blow off your driveway, you can get some leaves in it, but it hasn't been a big deal for me with my current house I'm living in. And again, I did that 16 years ago and haven't had any water come under the door since. So anyway, that's about the size of it. And again, if instead of using a chisel, if you get the pieces cracking off with a screwdriver, I would probably try a gasket scraper, because it's got a nice wide, like an inch or so wide blade, and that might do it and not pop your concrete like I got there. Or if you don't care about that, then it doesn't matter. And I don't know, it's a driveway, garage. It doesn't really matter that much to me. It just depends on how picky you are.